From Penny breaking out of her shell, to Darwin going from a normal goldfish, to growing legs and becoming a part of the Watterson family, today I'm gonna find which character in Gumball has changed the most. And by the end of the video, I'll crown the character who became the most unrecognizable by the end of the show, starting with Penny Fitzgerald. Penny undergoes one of the most visually and emotionally symbolic arcs in the entire series. Her journey is about gaining independence and being able to express herself. Initially, Penny is introduced as a gentle, shy, and emotionally reserved girl. She's mostly defined by her crush on Gumball. Her design reflects this very well, being encased in a smooth, pastel-colored shell that hides her true form. The shell is simple and non-threatening, making her look safe and contained. Penny is fully accepted by the world of Elmore from the start, but her value is tied to how little space she takes up. In earlier appearances, Penny consistently avoids confrontation and suppresses strong emotions, especially anger. When these emotions surface, they're framed as dangerous or excessive. In the episode The Shell, her worst nightmare comes true.
What was that? Nothing!
This moment creates a surge of panic because she knows that her family would not approve of her revealing her true self. Penny's family is scared, threatening the damage as a serious threat rather than an opportunity to grow. But Gumball feels differently and pushes Penny to pursue what she really wants.
But maybe you wouldn't like the real me.
There's no way that could be true. Whatever is inside, we can deal with it together.
This is reflected in the second and final break as she chooses to break it on her own, and it reveals her true form, jumpstarting her character development. Visually, Penny's new design is chaotic and fluid, lacking a fixed shape. This instability mirrors her emotional honesty, and a change is shown in her relationship with Gumball as a result. Penny's arc ultimately resolves in self-acceptance rather than emotional perfection, and it ends with Penny being a strong female lead, who can rival Gumball's excessiveness while still retaining her emotional maturity. But the next character shows what happens when someone allows themselves to be defined by rejection. Initially, Rob is introduced as a completely insignificant background character, and he stays that way up until season 3. Rob's early designs reinforces this role. He is visually bland and partially unfinished. He easily blends into the background, signaling that he is not meant to matter. During the episode The Void, Rob is accidentally erased from reality and trapped in a space where discarded characters and animation errors are sent. Inside The Void, Rob learns his invisibility was not accidental. Characters who fail to remain relevant are literally removed from the world. This marks the first major pivot in Rob's character arc. For the first time, his invisibility is acknowledged. After his incident with The Void, his design mutates. His body becomes irregular, along with his face. His movements are jittery and unnatural, showcasing his corruption. Once Rob escapes the Void, he no longer belongs in the world. He wants to understand and control it. This shift is most clearly shown in the episodes where he takes on a more major role. In the episode The Future, Rob attempts to use his new knowledge after discovering a character who can predict the future. Rob believes that knowing about the upcoming events will finally allow him to escape irrelevance. Rather than using his knowledge to help others, Rob uses it to test the limits of the narrative. He tries to place himself at the center of the story. However, every attempt fails, and it leads to him wanting to control the show even more. And that's what we see in the amazing world of Gumball season finale, where Rob's motivations are fully exposed.
Why did they stop me? Transformation is the only chance they have of escaping to the other place when this world...
Rob's final state is not that of a defeated villain, but a broken character who understands too much to belong and too little to escape. But we do see him return one more time in the rewrite, where he becomes the new owner of the Awesome Store after the Shadow Guy retired. And it'll be interesting to see how this arc progresses in future episodes. But next, we will see Rob's enemy and how he has changed throughout the show, Gumball Watterson. As the main character of the show, Gumball begins begins as a loud and impulsive guy driven by his big ego. As the creators developed his character further, they decided to make him a black cat, as it fit the personality they had in mind for him. Unlucky but optimistic, since black cats symbolize bad luck. Finally, the decision was made to have him be blue, because it's a color that's not usually found on cats, and it had a 70s to 80s Japanese mascot sort of feel, and that's exactly what we ended up seeing. Interestingly, we end up hearing Gumball's voice portrayed by 6 completely different people. He started off with Nicky Jones, quickly being changed to Logan Grove, who voiced Gumball for seasons 1 and 2, before eventually being changed again to Jacob Hopkins because of him being too old for the role of Gumball. Jacob then held the role till season 5, where he was changed to Nicholas Cantu for once again reaching puberty. Then Duke Cutler briefly had a role for the Gumball Chronicles, before ultimately giving it to Ilkiel Thiele, who is voicing him today. But coming back to the character, in the early seasons, Gumball reacts first and thinks later, often escalating minor problems into full-blown disasters, like in the 3rd, when Gumball is very jealous after Darwin starts spending a lot of time with Tobias. Instead of expressing this, he tries to insert himself into another friendship with Alan just to prove himself that he doesn't need Darwin. Overall, he treated friendship as something to be owned rather than shared. Across the various early episodes, Gumball chose his ego over his friends and family consistently, but this would change over time. The episode The Signal marks the first major emotional pivot for Gumball. After pushing Darwin away because of his glitches, he's forced to confront the consequences of his actions without the safety net of immediate forgiveness. Unlike the earlier episodes, Gumball doesn't win through manipulation.
May we never let this happen again. Your best buddy, Gumball. Yeah, not sure.
After The Signal, Gumball begins to fear hurting others more than being embarrassed. This is further developed through the course of his friendship with Penny, where he had to leave his ego behind for Penny's happiness on multiple occasions. An example of this growth is in The Disaster, when it's finally revealed that Rob was the cause of all of the disastrous, weird events. Gumball fights to fix this. When he failed, he jumped into the void to fix everything on his own. In the season 6 finale, the contrast with season 1 Gumball is crystal clear. By rejecting the idea that Elmore and his friends need to be fixed, Gumball reframes chaos and weirdness as a source of something meaningful. He inspires others to embrace their flaws, and ends up saving his friends by doing so. Gumball has evolved from a character driven by ego and arrogance into one defined by emotional awareness, honesty, and acceptance. He shows that maturity is not only the absence of flaws, but the ability to acknowledge them without shame. In doing so, he's also inspired many around him to do the same thing. But even perfect characters weren't spared in the show, as we would see in this next character, Anais Watterson. Anais went from someone whose personality is based on being intelligent to someone who has to deal with the social burdens of having that same personality. Her character design is directly linked to her internal transformation. In her prototype design, she was less refined, with a pink tail and a long head with larger, more oval eyes. These sketches show that she was meant to be more alien than the people around her. In her more familiar design, however, her eyes take up most of the space on her face, letting her take in more of her surroundings. She also has a much higher pitched voice, being played by Kayla Ray Kowalski, and she's actually the only Watterson child to be played by one voice actor from the start to the end of the show. She had her first proper role in the season 1 episode The Responsible, when Gumball and Darwin are left alone to babysit Anais. They don't exactly understand the assignment. Because the brothers mistook being responsible for being overprotective, Anais had to step up. The siblings fight, and Anais locks her brothers on the roof. But even when Anais finally took charge, things still ended up going wrong.
You know what I'm gonna have now? A nice, relaxing bath with real water!
The episode does a fantastic job of showcasing Anais's intelligence, while still not forgetting that she's only 4 years old. As the series moved into season 2 and beyond, the show started exploring her darker side. Her dark side can be seen in the season 2 episode The Remote, when the Watterson family realized that each of their favorite shows air at the same time, and obviously chaos ensues. While each member has their own ways of going about the idea, Anais pulls off a grand master plan.
I feel so proud of her, yet really scared at the same time.
This is where Anais starts to treat people around her like they're variables in social equations, and she's the one pulling the strings. This trait seems to be coded into her, as she was even seen rivaling with her own brothers when she was born. But seasons 3 to 5 see yet another shift in Anais, as someone whose intelligence doesn't make her better, but rather worse in a world ruled by nonsense. She tries to bridge the gap between her genius and the typical experiences of a 4-year-old. The episode The Parasite marks this shift dramatically, when Gumball thinks that Anais' new friend is just using Anais for her endless kindness. The ending would have him questioning everything.
So, what do we do?
Pretty simple. Your sister needs to let go of that poor girl. She is the parasite.
What?
But as she matures, she starts to use her abilities for solving mysteries, like in The Detective. The last 2 seasons develop her emotional side more. In the episode The Brain, Anais begins to understand that her intelligence can't fix the world around her. This acceptance would cement the change in her personality, as she finally understands that she can be the intellectual glue for her family while not trying to fix them. From starting as a child who manages the household, Anais grew into someone who understands the complex nature of being in a universe like the amazing world of Gumball. But she wasn't the only one who had to learn that she can't fix her family. Next on the list is Anais' mother, Nicole. Her arc is one of the most emotionally grounded in the entire series. Nicole is animated in a very clean, sharp style, and you can tell just by looking at her that she's someone who's always holding herself together. She's also almost always seen wearing her work outfit, the white collared shirt with an orange, yellow, and green striped button symbolizing the Rainbow Factory. And I just found that out while writing this video, so if you didn't know that either and just learned something new, make sure to subscribe. This side of Nicole is revealed early on in the series, in the way she responds to failure and chaos within the household. The episode The Painting marks the first noticeable proof of Nicole's belief system. When she is forced to take a break from work, her world collapses. To her, work is not just employment, it's also her proof of stability and purpose. It expresses how deeply Nicole ties her self-esteem to productivity. Instead of learning to rest, Nicole makes everything worse. Her eventual breakdown is not treated as a failure, but as a situation that cannot be avoided.
Oh no! It's broken! How will I ever clean it all up? I feel so relaxed!
Early Nicole treats responsibility very harshly. She believes that it's a necessary step to keep the family from collapsing. To understand why Nicole acts this way, the series eventually turns its attention to her past. Her backstory completely comes to light in the episode The Parents, where Nicole accidentally bumps into her parents. This is where we get to see what her childhood was like, and things were never pretty.
You have always been disappointed in me.
Only because we loved you.
No, because you always had insane expectations for me.
Growing up in a household that explicitly shows that love and approval were conditional led Nicole to develop her fiery temper as a coping mechanism to her parents' behaviors. Basically, it taught her that effort without perfection has no value. We can see a crack in this conditioning when Nicole chooses Richard, and just as we expected, things don't go so well with her parents. But when her parents don't show up for her wedding, something shifts in Nicole. This explains why Nicole cannot tolerate failure at all, whether it's all from herself or others. Throughout the earlier seasons of the series, she's trying to prepare her children for a world she believes will not be forgiving at all, like the one that she grew up in. Nicole takes the first step towards rebuilding her relationship with her parents. By the time the series reached its finale, Nicole is no longer driven by fear of failure. Early Nicole believed that strength meant control and that love had to be enforced through discipline, but by the end, Nicole understands that real stability comes from trust, emotional presence, and allowing imperfection to exist. Nicole's growth doesn't erase her past, but reframes it. Instead of repeating what's been done to her, she has to learn to break the cycle. Letting go also dramatically changes this next character, who chose to break generational traumas in his own way, Richard Watterson. At first glance, Richard Watterson appears to be one of the simplest characters in the series. He's loud, lazy, impulsive, and almost completely disconnected from responsibility. But beneath this exterior lies a surprisingly interesting character arc. Richard's design immediately communicates softness. He's large, round, brightly pink, with simple shapes and minimal detail. His posture slouches constantly, and his movements are slow and uncoordinated. Basically, everything about his appearance screams comfort and indulgence. In the episode called The Puppy, Richard's downright refusal to take accountability ends in his children having to deal with a dangerous pet. When this behavior becomes a problem, he avoids consequences by leaning into helplessness rather than learning or adapting. He always expects others, primarily Nicole, to resolve the situation for him. The reason for this type of behavior comes from when we get to see Granny JoJo's parenting style, which finally makes things clear in the episode called The Authority.
It's because of your parenting that he has no common sense whatsoever. You protected him his entire life, never letting him think for himself, and now he can hardly think at all.
This experience is closely tied to Richard's relationship with his father, who represents not authority or discipline, but abandonment. Rather than offering guidance or stability, Richard's father, Frankie, ultimately leaves. Choosing to opt out becomes Richard's coping mechanism, because responsibility was never shown to him as something rewarding or emotionally safe. This stereotype is broken in later seasons, especially in season 5's The Deal. After Nicole calls him a terrible parent, Richard goes on strike, withdrawing completely. This results in immediate chaos. Without his presence, the children quickly regress into a feral, almost gremlin-like state. Nicole, despite her discipline and structure, is unable to control them. This episode demonstrates that while Nicole provides rules and order, Richard provides emotional grounding. Without him, the household becomes unsustainable in a different way. When Richard finally intervenes, he restores order by using unconventional methods.
I'm not gonna let you all catapult the neighbor over the house. I am gonna let one of you do it.
What?
What?
Richard, how is this helping?
Huh? 5, 4, 3, 2.
While this is clearly played for comedy, it actually shows Richard's parenting style very clearly. He does not impose rigid discipline. His parenting approach works despite his informality, but because of it, this arc is cemented further when he finally tries to bond with his father Frankie, which ends badly for him at every turn. His growth is seen at the end of the show, when Frankie questions where he went wrong.
I didn't start off as a good father, but your kids, they see you as better than you are. So every day you bust your chops and try to live up to that.
This scene shows us how far he's came to take accountability and at least try to fix things. Richard's evolution shows that maturity is not always expressed through control, but knowing one's limits and choosing care over expectation. Together, Nicole and Richard's parenting styles form a functional balance. Nicole drives responsibility and order, while Richard absorbs the chaos that comes with having 3 kids. But before I crown the character who changed the most, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more awesome Gumball content just like this. But now, let's move on to Darwin Watterson, whose character arc easily goes through the biggest change of all the characters in the amazing world of Gumball. From the very start of his origin, Darwin was biologically just a goldfish, introduced as Gumball's pet. In the origins, it's shown that Darwin grows legs purely through the will to return to Gumball after being flushed away. This ultimately led to a strong fear of abandonment. His body is far from natural, reinforcing the idea that his body, as well as his place in the family, was something he had to earn. Throughout the show, we see Darwin being voiced by 6 different people. For the pilot episode, we had Jake Pratt, who quickly gave away the role to Kwesi Botche for season 1 to 3. Then it was Terrell Ransom Jr.'s turn, who handled him for 2 more seasons when Donnell came into the picture. Then in season 6 episode The Anybody, we had Christian J. Simon, who played him for the final role, Darwin's yearbook in the Gumball Chronicles. Finally, as of today, we have Hero Hunter voicing him. These changes, like with Gumball, are because the voice actors went through puberty, making their voices too deep to play 12-year-old Darwin. Early Darwin acted more as a moral buffer rather than a decision maker to Gumball's ideas. In episodes like The Responsible and The Third, we see Darwin being consistently obedient and kind, rarely ever assertive or before challenging his mind. Season 2 is where we can notice Darwin's personality and identity starting to shift. He redesigned once again with a softer appearance, and we can slowly start to see Darwin think for himself. One of the first moments where we'd clearly be able to see this is in the words. Darwin's kind and submissive behavior frustrates Gumball, and he tries to teach him how to insult people. But what happens next is such a milestone for Darwin, where he finally snapped.
I swear I'm trying my best, Mr. Small, but I just can't stop myself from saying, I'm tired of staring at your hideous, hairy Mentos!
Interesting.
The episode revealed something huge about Darwin. That is, that he was holding himself back the entire time. Darwin's kindness was no longer about him just being innocent, but showed his restraint. By season 3 and 4, Darwin becomes more confident and far more opinionated. His eyes are now fully round, and we see Darwin going through puberty as his voice is now changed. The show decided to not hide this and make it a part of the story in the episode The Kids. Watching Darwin actively grow up acknowledging that he's aging in real time.
Did you really think you would stay kids forever?
Yeah, kinda. Isn't there something you can do?
No.
This maturity came with a dark side too. In the safety, Darwin's fear of loss turns into control. After watching a safety video, he turned to conquer Elmore in order to protect everybody. Darwin instills surveillance, restricts everybody's movements, and forces order. This wasn't for power, but because he loves too hard.
Gumball, that wasn't very safe. Did you hurt yourself?
Yes. But that doesn't mean you're right!
But I'm doing this for your own good.
Darwin only seems to increasingly believe that his emotional insight grants him authority. Seasons 5 and 6 push this to the extreme. Darwin stops reacting or listening to Gumball and anybody living under his shadow. By this time, his body language has entirely loosened up. In The Candidate, he's the only character who identified real danger, while the others were caught up in irrelevant things.
Can we at least talk about the temperature? It's so hot in here. The saliva in my mouth is starting to bubble. We need to...
Eventually, Darwin's maturity finds balance through his relationship with Carrie. Their romance, beginning to unfold in The Matchmaker, represents Darwin's true first relationship. Carrie doesn't depend on Darwin with emotional needs like Gumball. They both truly met as equals. And all the way to season 8, Darwin has completely stepped out of his sidekick role. His arc proves that identity in Elmore is not fixed by where you're from. Darwin Watterson's journey quietly shows us that growth is not about becoming louder or more dominant, but about learning when empathy becomes control and choosing when to react. Make sure to subscribe and click the video on screen. I'm sure you'll love it.